nays are 263. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for recorded vote on amendment number 1, printed in the Congressional Record by the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 1, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
The underlying legislation would repeal the long-term care program, assistance program, called the Class Act, which was part of the new health care law. This 2-minute vote, and a vote on an amendment by Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas, which would direct the Congressional Budget Office to report on the economic impact of not having long-term care insurance. Again, it's a 2-minute vote. 2 more amendment votes will follow this.
The nays are 264, and the amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for recorded vote on amendment number 4, printed in the Congressional Record by the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Deutsch, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 4, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Deutsch of Florida.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
It's the third of 4 amendment votes to a bill that would repeal the Class Act, part of the health care law, the part that provides for long-term care insurance. This amendment by Ted Deutsch of Florida, a Democrat, would prevent the repeal of the class program from taking effect until the Comptroller General had certified that failure to implement it will not increase state and federal Medicaid spending. Emily Etheridge in Congressional Quarterly wrote today that the administration suspended work on the Class Act in October after determining that it couldn't meet the law's requirements to be voluntary, self-sustaining, and solvent over 75 years. One more amendment vote to follow this.
Mr. Lynch. Mr. Davis. Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch votes aye. Mr. Rush. Mr. Rush votes aye.
Okay, Dean, close.
On this vote, yeas are 163.
Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas. Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 164, the nays are 260, and the amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is a request for recorded vote on amendment number 5, printed in the Congressional Record by the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Deutsch, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 5, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Deutsch of Florida.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
This will be the last amendment vote on H.R. 1173, a bill that repeals the long-term assistant care coverage, the Class Act that was part of the health care law. The Obama administration saying in October that it won't implement that part of the health care law due to insufficient funding. This amendment by Ted Deutsch of Florida would prevent the repeal of the Class Act from taking effect until Health and Human Services determines whether it has the authority to implement the Class Act and what statutory changes would be necessary to do that. We expect Democrats to offer a motion to recommit next, last chance to change the bill, and then vote on final passage coming up. Also ahead, a couple of votes on bills debated in the House earlier, one which would freeze pay for civilian federal workers for a third straight year, including pay for lawmakers, members of the House, and their aides. Also a bill that would cut welfare grants to states that fail to prevent beneficiaries from spending money in liquor stores, strip clubs, or casinos. Those will be votes coming up shortly here in the House.
The amendment is not agreed to. The question is on the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Accordingly, under the rule, the committee rises.
Okay, sir, you can go down there and report back up.
Thank you.
Chairman.
House Committee at 522. I report the bill back to the House. Adopted in committee of the whole.
The chair of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that the committee has had under consideration the bill H.R. 1173. And pursuant to House Resolution 522, reports the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole. Under the rule, the previous question is ordered. The question is on adoption of the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to repeal the class program.
The House will be in order. The House will be in order. Will members please take their conversations off the House floor? For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
The gentleman opposed to the bill.
I am in its present form.
The gentleman qualifies. The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Garamendi of California moves to recommit the bill H.R. 1173 to the Committee on Energy and Commerce with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendments. At the end of the bill, add the following. Section 3, ensuring long-term care services for seniors with Alzheimer's disease and other disabled individuals, A, in general. Section 2 shall not take effect until such date as the Secretary of Health and Human Services certifies that a national voluntary insurance program is in effect for purchasing community living assistance services and supports for individuals who, 1, have A, Alzheimer's disease or other cognitive impairment, B, chronic diabetes, heart disease, or advanced stages of cancer, C, a disability or traumatic injury, D, any other serious disease or health condition, and 2, require assistance with 2 or more activities of daily living such as eating, bathing, dressing, and toiletring. B, exception. Notwithstanding subsection A, section 2B, 3B shall take effect upon the enactment of this act.
House will be in order. The gentleman from California is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want all members to pause for a moment and think about your family, think about your community, and the people you represent. And I want you to put in your mind Alzheimer's, put in your mind Alzheimer's and the effect that it has on individuals and families.
The gentleman will suspend. The gentleman's correct. The House will be in order. Members will kindly take their conversations off the House floor.
Now, are you envisioning the effect of Alzheimer's?
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. Not only on the individual, but on the family. I want you to put in your mind that terrible auto accident that left that young child totally disabled. I want you to put in your mind the diabetic. Think about the diabetic, long-term diabetes, and the effect that it has. Now, the point of my amendment is not to kill this bill, but rather to amend it in such a way that it can be taken up on the floor with all of us supporting this. Long-term care. Long-term care is a major challenge for families, for individuals, and for this nation. 5.4 million Americans today have Alzheimer's, and at the end of this decade it's expected to double, more than 10 million. Keep that vision of the Alzheimer patient in your mind. It may be someone in your family. or in your circle. 26 million or 24 million Americans have diabetes. 26 million have heart disease. Think of that stroke victim. You know that person. They've been our colleagues, disabled, and in many cases totally disabled. What this amendment does is to deal with a profound problem in America. How do we care for those who are disabled, unable to care for themselves for a lengthy period of time? How do we do that? There is no effective way to do it today until that individual and family is flat broke.
House will come to order. Members will take their conversations off the House floor. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is no mechanism today to deal with this problem unless you have become totally bankrupt, no assets, and then you get to go on the Medicaid program, a burden on our general fund and on every state's general fund. This amendment offers a solution. This amendment says that we will keep the Class Act in effect, but seek a national voluntary insurance program. Now, I happen to know insurance, and I happen to know that all of the long-term insurance programs out there have failed to work because they are narrow, because they've been unable to reach across the broad spectrum of America to provide a broad base of risk. You need a very, very large pool to deal with this very large and very expensive problem. If my amendment is adopted, we will be able to go forward and to repair the Class Act into a voluntary insurance program that would involve the entire nation, and thereby provide a premium that is affordable. The present programs do not. And as we know from the Class Act itself and the work done by the Department of Health and Human Services, it too is flawed. But the problem remains. The problem has not disappeared. It is, in fact, in every one of our families and quite possibly with us as individuals. We need a solution. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, we have to find a solution to this problem because now it falls back. When all other resources are gone, for the individual and the family, it falls back onto the general fund of the state and the federal government. Not a good solution at all. So I ask for your support on this. If you adopt this amendment, we will immediately vote on the Class Act itself, and it will be repealed, but not real. It will be maintained as we work forward towards a solution. That's our task here. That's our task as members of Congress. Find solutions for the real problems that face every American. Mr. Speaker, I yield back my time.
The gentleman's time has expired. For purposes, the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition.
Mr. Speaker, I claim the time in opposition to the motion.
The gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the gentleman from California, in mentioning these categories of suffering seniors, people with Alzheimer's diseases, chronic diabetes, heart disease, advanced stages of cancer, disability, or traumatic injury. I'd like to tell the gentleman and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, Mr. Speaker, that we on this side of the aisle always have these victims in our mind, in our heart, in our prayers. But we have the compassion and the honesty not to promote and present a ruse and false hope. And that's what this so-called Class Act non-program does to these suffering individuals that suffer from these chronic medical conditions and disabilities. H.R. 1173 is an opportunity for this Congress to reverse one of the most costly cover-ups, yes, cover-ups, this administration has imposed upon the American taxpayer. The failure of this administration to implement the class program came as no surprise to the many of us who had actually listened to the concerns from unbiased actuaries. Even the administration's own chief health actuary, Richard Foster from CMS, about the certain failure of the class program. The concerns, Mr. Speaker, were bipartisan during debate on the President's health care law, and even the President's own fiscal commission called for the program's repeal. So today we have the opportunity to finally get this failed program off of the books. This administration has spent millions of dollars, and yes, 8 ways of Sunday, here they are, colleagues, 8 ways short of having yet another mandate that all people have coverage. They have tried to implement a program that never had a chance of being implemented. And today we're faced with an $80 billion hole in the budget that this administration claimed would be filled by the implementation of the class program. Listen, colleagues, key Senate Democrats like Senator Harkin believe that there is still one last option worth considering: another unconstitutional mandate on every American. In fact, in comments to reporters yesterday, this is what the senator said. Senator Harkin made the claim that the problem with the current class program that it is voluntary. It needs to be mandatory, in the opinion of the esteemed senator. The need for long-term care reform is an important issue, and I am confident solutions can be accomplished, and we can do this in a bipartisan way, as they have been done before on this issue. We cannot, however, continue to deny the fact that the class program is an abject failure, and its repeal is necessary today. I say to my Democratic colleagues, admit your failure. You rushed this provision into the health care law. I understand your compassion toward the late Senator Kennedy and wanted this to be a legacy for him, but it was his staff that maybe misled the committee and the Democratic majority. But admit your failure, get over it, vote to repeal this failed Class Act, and live to fight another day. And I recommend that we vote down this motion to recommit and for the bill to repeal, and I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back. With-that objection, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the motion to recommit. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The noes have it, and the motion fails.
Recorded vote.
The gentleman from California requests a recorded vote. The recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 8 and Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on the motion to recommit will be followed by 5-minute votes on passage of H.R. 1173 if ordered, and motions to suspend the rules on H.R. 3835 and H.R. 3567. This will be a 15-minute vote.
The bill the House has considered today would repeal the Class Act, part of the health care law, which provides long-term health care services. This is the Democratic motion to recommit, their last chance to change the bill, and their motion would prohibit the repeal of the Class Act from taking effect until the Secretary of Health and Human Services certifies that a national voluntary long-term care insurance program is in place for people who have Alzheimer's, chronic diabetes, heart disease, cancer, disability, or other serious diseases or health conditions. It's a 15-minute vote. The final passage vote is next. Ahead of today's debate, we talked to a Capitol Hill reporter about what's in this bill. Emily Etheridge is a writer for Congressional Quarterly. Why do House Republicans want to repeal the long-term care insurance program from the health care law if the Department of Health and Human Services has already suspended work on that program?
Well, the Republicans have a goal of repealing as much of the health care law as they possibly can. This is just a really big target for them right now. It's a pretty easy thing to strike down. They say, if you're not going to go ahead with it, then why not let us, score this legislative victory and say that we repealed a part of the health care law?
What were HHS's reasons for suspending work on the long-term care program, and when did they make that announcement?
In October, they decided that they would suspend implementation. The law requires the program be both voluntary and self-sustaining and solvent over 75 years. And it gave the HHS a lot of leeway in crafting that program. And last October, HHS said, you know what, we can't find a way to make this work and fulfill all three of those requirements. It just can't happen.
There seems to be a bit of consensus on this issue. You wrote in your article about the debate today that members of both parties agree they should work on a new long-term care measure, but they disagree on how.
That's exactly right. And Republicans say if we repeal the Class Act, that will put some urgency towards making a new program. But it's very hard. Everyone agrees that long-term care is a problem. No one's really sure how to fund it and make it work in a way so just the sickest people aren't enrolling. Obviously, that would just cost too much money.
Democrats today several times have talked about the slogan of repeal and replace that Republicans have used in debates in the past over health care issues. Have Republicans offered any replace measures for the health care law?
You know, we haven't seen a lot of replace yet from the Republican majority, but we learned last week that they are planning a big replacement bill that they're going to unveil once the Supreme Court rules on the health care law. We expect that in June. So we should see some sort of replacement health care legislation from the Republicans this summer, they're saying.
Now today, this bill coming up on the long-term care program, is it going to pass?
It'll definitely pass the House. There'll be some Democrats who jump on board, and Senator John Thune has a companion bill in the Senate. He's asking Harry Reid to bring that up for a vote right away in the other chamber, but that doesn't look quite as likely.
In the House today, you said some Democrats would jump on board. Why would they do that?
Some of them agree with the Republican argument that this is just that needs to be gotten rid of, that the budgetary mess of it is all wrong. And, you know, some of these Democrats didn't vote for the health care law in the first place. There are still some of those guys in Congress, so they'll support this repeal bill as well.
An update from Emily Etheridge with Congressional Quarterly, and you can read more at CQ.com. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And the final passage vote on the repeal of the Class Act is coming up next. This is the motion to recommit vote, a last chance to change the bill before final passage. This is a 15-minute vote, and final passage will be a 5-minute vote. Earlier today, House Speaker John Boehner and other members of the majority leadership told reporters that they think President Obama's economic policies have failed, while House Republicans have passed a number of bills that would benefit the economy. The Speaker also said he didn't believe the President's new mortgage assistance program, which was announced today, would work any better than the administration's previous attempts to help homeowners. They spoke to reporters for just over 10 minutes.
Morning, everyone. The President's economic policies have failed to improve our economy, and in fact, they've made them worse. House Republicans this week are going to continue our focus on getting our economy moving again. The American Infrastructure and Energy Jobs Act will be worked on in committee. We hope to have it on the floor in the coming weeks. Reform the way we build highways and rebuild highways, and we'll link this to American energy production. The President, in his State of the Union address, called for an all-of-the-above energy strategy, and House Republicans fully agree. And we believe that opening up the Intermountain West and the OCS will provide needed revenues to help fund the rebuilding of our roads and bridges. This is all part of our plan for American job creators. We've passed 30 bills, 27 of them are still sitting in the United States Senate. It's time for the Senate to act and allow the American people the chance to get back to work.
Morning. You know, in everyday life, when something doesn't work, most people stop doing it and try something new. Well, we know that the President's policies have not helped this economy get back on strong footing. We know they're not working. His policies of stimulus and of the radical takeover of health care and the incurrence of more debt, these are not working to help get people back to work in this country. What we've heard yesterday, though, is the White House now says that perhaps we should focus on small business. Well, thank you, Mr. President. We want you to help us do something for the backbone of this country, which are the American small businesses. Some of the things that the White House mentioned are the things that we've been talking about for over a year now. like business expensing, like helping business startups, like trying to address the visa cap issue for foreign workers. All of these are in our plan for America's job creators. All of these things, we've been asking the President to join us to help small businesses. So we're very excited about that, and hopefully we can get something done. Now, also, we need to make sure that we are sending the signal that we're going to get the fiscal house straight here in Washington, that we stop spending money we don't have. We've got a bill on the floor today that does that. What it does is it says we've got to reduce the expenditure having to do with the growth in the number of federal employees. We want to freeze federal employee pay, including our own. This is a bill which I think makes sure that we are consistent with what we're expecting of everybody else, that we're doing it here in the legislative branch as well. We hope our colleagues on the other side of the aisle will join us in doing that.
You know, yesterday with the CBO, it came out with the numbers. Just continues to show the policies of this president has failed. For his 4 years, he has the four highest deficits since 1946. Today on the floor, the Democrats are trying to actually block freezing our pay. They're trying to block the ability, if we follow through on our pledge, to cut our own budgets even further than we cut last time. There's no bigger sign. You have to start from yourself. Today on the floor, they'll have the opportunity. You've seen the President continue to fail with $1 trillion deficit, highest since 1946.
Well, another week, more presidential failures, more House Republican jobs bills coming to the floor. Not that the American people needed yet one more data point that this president's policies had failed, but as the Congressional Budget Office put out their annual baseline budget report, we now know that President Obama is on track to deliver $4 trillion deficits in a row. We've got to quit spending money we don't have for jobs we never get. And that's why, as part of the House Republican plan for America's job creators, we have bills coming to the floor, as the other leadership has indicated, that would freeze federal pay, and in addition, 2 budget process reform aimed at ensuring that we spend less, not tax more, in Washington. In addition, when you talk to small businesses throughout America, they know that the President's health care plan is one of the single biggest impediments to job growth. And so House Republicans will bring the repeal of the Class Act, a part of the President's health care program that is inhibiting job growth. I heard from a small businessman in my district, a furniture businessman in Garland, Texas. He said, if it wasn't for the President's health care plan, its complexity and its cost, I could start 2 more companies and hire dozens of people. Again, one more week of presidential failed policies, another week of House Republican jobs bills.
In the President's State of the Union, he called for an all-of-the-above energy approach. And as House Republicans, we've long supported that approach. And yet the President's call for action really begs the question, is his rhetoric matching reality? As we know, the President killed the Keystone Project. It's a project that has bipartisan support, would create tens of thousands of jobs. And the difference in approach between the President and the House Republicans, I think, really points out a fundamental difference in approach as we move forward. The House Republicans support the Keystone Project. We support a Keystone economy, which is driven by the private sector, where we see innovation and entrepreneurship and a limited role for the federal government. On the other side, we see the President supporting a Solyndra economy, where the President uses taxpayer dollars to support special interests and picks the winners and the losers. And as a friend of mine recently pointed out, when the government picks, it seems like the government often picks losers. House Republicans support the Keystone Project. We support a Keystone economy. We embrace an all-of-the-above approach to energy, and we encourage the President to join us in this effort.
As Chairman Henserling said, we are working to make certain that we get the Obamacare health care bill off the books. House Republicans voted right off the bat to repeal the entire thing, and we continue to bring forward ways to repeal it brick by brick by brick. Now, this week we will take up the repeal of the Class Act, which is an important step for us to do. This is a classic budget gimmick. And for those of you who read the bill, go to Title 8, Section 8001 and 8002 of the Obamacare health care bill. And that is where it lays out the Class Act, which is to be there for long-term care. I would encourage you as you read this to just realize we have no example where the federal government has stepped in to make these near-term investments where it has yielded the long-term savings that some of the theorists expect to see. It just doesn't happen. It's time to get the Class Act off the books. It is not fiscally sustainable.
Good morning. I'm Rob Woodall. I'm a freshman from Georgia's 7th, and I have the pleasure of serving on the Budget Committee. This Budget Committee has been working hard, worked hard last year, produced a budget that I think America could be proud of, and is working hard this year on 10 different budget reform process issues. You know, as a freshman, it surprised me I got to Washington, D.C. It's the only place in the country where you can spend $10 this year and $12 next year and call that a spending cut. I don't understand it. American families don't understand it. And we're bringing a bill to the floor this week on Friday that's going to change that. I had the pleasure of introducing that bill. It's called the Baseline Reform Act. And what it says is this: when the CBO goes to score what it projects America's spending to be, it should just follow the law. It should follow what Congress has done. The current process is to assume that next Congress is going to spend more than this Congress. And in fairness, based on past Congresses, that was probably a good assumption. But this Congress appropriated $1,091 billion in 2010, $1,050 billion in 2011, $1,043 billion in 2012. This Congress is on a downward trajectory for spending, and the American people know that. Baseline Reform Act says no more can you spend $10 this year, $12 next year, and call that a cut. If you spend $10 this year, you need to spend $10 next year, and be honest, have fact-based budgeting for the first time in a long time in this institution. And I'm so proud of Chairman Ryan and the leadership for bringing this bill forward. Thank you.
Couple questions.
Speaker Boehner, in Florida.
Loudmouth. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. In Florida, Newt Gingrich ran an ad criticizing Governor Romney for depriving Jewish individuals of $5 kosher meals. The rhetoric got pretty heated. Ed Gillespie said it was bad for the party to have an elongated primary now. Do you agree with that? And should that rhetoric stop?
As the gentleman is well aware, I'm not involved myself in this presidential primary race. Those who choose to show up and vote in the Republican primaries are going to make their decision. I've got a big job to do here along with our leadership team, and I'm going to stay focused on my work.
So you're okay with
the President is announcing a proposal today to help underwater homeowners refinance.
One more time? One more time? How many times have we done this? We've done this at least 4 times where there's some new government program to help homeowners who have trouble with their mortgages. None of these programs have worked. And I don't know why anyone would think that this next idea is going to work. And all they've done is delay the clearing of the market. The sooner the market clears and we understand where the prices really are, will be the most important thing we can do in order to improve home values around the country.
Do you think, though, that you can work with the President in any way to actually help?
I am always open to working with the President of the United States. We both have a job to do. If it makes economic sense, if it's fiscally responsible, certainly I'll take a look at it.
Speaker Boehner, just following on Luke, though, you are a top leader of the Republican Party. When you're looking at the primary in Florida and the primary continuing on, how concerned are you as a party leader that a long, drawn-out, bitter primary, what impact that's going to have on your party's
Listen, I understand that people are concerned about how long the primary process is dragging out. I would remind people that President Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton had a fight that went through June of 2008. So I think everybody just needs to relax, and this will resolve itself.
Speaker,
yes, sir.
Update
update on where House...
Vote. The yeas are 175 and the nays are 247. The motion to recommit is not adopted. Question is on passage of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it.
That's a recorded vote.
A recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
And this is final passage on H.R. 1173, a bill that would repeal the Class Act, the part of the health care law which provides long-term health care services. This is a 5-minute vote.
On this vote, the yeas are 267 and the nays are 159. The bill is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Ross, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 3835, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 3835, a bill to extend the pay limitation for members of Congress and federal employees.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
This is a bill that would freeze civilian pay for federal workers for a third straight year, also freeze the pay of House members and their aides. It's a 5-minute vote. One more 5-minute vote will follow, and that will be it for votes this evening. Over in the Senate today, a third day of work on a bill that would make it illegal for members of Congress to trade stocks based on non-public information, also known as the Stock Act. The bill has some dozen amendments that have been filed, and Harry Reid has not announced yet how they will move forward with the legislation, so debate continues. You can follow that on C-SPAN 2. On the Stock Act, though, just a short while ago, Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi tweeted that I've signed the discharge petition to force Republicans to bring the Stock Act banning insider trading for an up or down vote. She means in the House, of course. You can follow members of Congress and reporters who cover Congress if you go to twitter.com/cspan.
On this vote, the yeas are 309, the nays are 117. Two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Bustani, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 3567 as amended, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 3567, a bill to amend Title IV of the Social Security Act to require states to implement policies to prevent assistance under the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program from being used in strip clubs, casinos, and liquor stores.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
Just to update, the Class Act repeal passed in the House just 2 votes ago by a vote of 267 to 159. And this should be the last recorded vote of the day on a bill that would cut the welfare grants to states that fail to prevent beneficiaries from spending their benefits, their money, in liquor stores, strip clubs, or casinos. It is a 5-minute vote. There's going to be a new member of the House next week. Oregon Democrat Suzanne Bonamici will be the newest member. She won a special election to replace former Representative David Wu in Portland, Oregon, and Roll Call is tweeting at this hour that she's going to be sworn in next Tuesday. Former member Tom Tancredo today endorsed presidential candidate former Senator Rick Santorum, who is in Colorado today campaigning. Also campaigning in Nevada today, Newt Gingrich and Ron Paul, both of them in Nevada. And following his win yesterday in Florida, Mitt Romney has been spending the day campaigning in Minnesota. For more details on the campaign and what's ahead, go to our website, cspan.org/campaign2012.
37.